One more trip to the past. Hey there, welcome back to Writer's Theory. I'm James Winterthorn, and this is the 52nd day of my project to write a novel in less than 90 days. Yesterday, I ended the chapter with our hero group setting the stage at an abandoned outpost, preparing for the last action sequence of the story. Well, today we are going to fill in the last gap in the timeline of the story. That being when Mercer left the cabin in Missouri, and we have that gap from that point to when he and Alvarez meet up and start way back at chapter 2. So I have that space to fill up, and we're going to start that today. So now I'm back to a journeying motif where he's going to be on horseback a lot and going from place to place. So my effort here is to keep the interest high, so keeping the events novel and interesting, and pushing the story forward. So let's get into the first part of day 52 and see how well I did. So I always like to start the chapters reviewing the outline that I was given and that I created myself. So here we go. This is we're back to the previous movement. I know it's technically not a year before, but I put that in there just so I knew where it fell in the plot sequence. Because really, like, this is only a few weeks before the events of the story. But this way I can help. It helps me structure it. So of course I'm going to change that chapter title later. Here I wanted to just focus on descriptions. I wanted to be clear where he's at. I like that he comes back to Kansas and is met by sunflowers. But I really just wanted a sprinkling of exposition here because I don't need to describe everything. But I also want the experience of the journey. So he is riding the horse, and he's headed to where he believes that Celia Shaw might be, so he can confront him with this evidence. But right now we're just experiencing the ride as he goes along on this leg of the journey. So I wanted him to be searching for Davy's gravesite. So that's kind of why he's trying to follow familiar places and why he's trying to look for familiar markers and having the experience of riding through the summer heat along a Kansas creek. So here, like, again, really focused on the description portion of it, sprinkling in enough exposition so I don't have to describe every little detail, but I can still convey the information that I need to convey. So hopefully it's a good mix of those two things. I generally scoff at the use of exposition just because I think it's too easy to rely on to try to tell the story. But when we use a lot of exposition, when we explain a lot of things, we're not telling a story anymore. We're just explaining something. And I don't want to have an experience explained as a writer. As I'm writing, I don't want a summary of what happened. And readers don't want a summary of what happened. They want that experience. And that's why we read stories and why we write them. But every once in a while, a little exposition is okay, as long as it aids in our story. So let's get on with the rest of day 52. So here he's just still moving along. So I'm basically keeping the same style, the same momentum that I have in the first portion. I want to keep the descriptions somewhat fresh just so it doesn't get redundant. And here we finally come upon the grave site, and we have our first bit of dialogue here. I have him talking to the horse just so there it can be some dialogue. Of course, the horse isn't going to talk back. It's not that kind of story. And so I wanted to have this moment where he had shared this story about Davies with the people in Missouri, and they remembered it and sold him that whiskey, and so he then brought that whiskey back to the gravesite to have a drink with his friend. So I thought that was something cool that I wanted to achieve here, and that was my goal when he got here. Since he's the only one talking, at least now he's talking to Davies. Getting his motivations for what he's doing. And that was the purpose I had in him traveling back along the same route that he had come in to find Charles's cabin with. And he is kind of reconciling that moment in his past and having that drink with his fallen friend. So I got there, I achieved that. Feel good about how that went. Hopefully it comes across in a genuine and meaningful way. So let's do today's line of the day. See what we have there. I've got that night fixed in my heart like a long and rusted nail. I've got to get it out of there before it corrupts me beyond salvation. And so this is Mercer speaking to Davies, and him being very aware of how much that night changed him. So I like this line because it demonstrates that. It's Mercer's own words, so there's some power in that he's saying these words himself. So I chose this line for that reason. I'm glad to be on to this particular stretch of the story. At this point, I'm not really sure how much to put in here, how long this is going to be, what events should happen during this time frame. So I'm just going to write it and just see what happens, and see where this part of the journey takes Mercer. So if you want to see where this part of the story goes, and see if I make my goal of writing this novel in time, please like and subscribe. That way you can see what I write tomorrow. I'm setting the stage for the climactic movement in that will be stuff and plot structure oriented things and malarkey.